Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. Ultimately, he ended up admitting to the murder of little Emma at his trial in October 1875, but he didn't stop confessing there. Apparently, this wasn't the first murder he committed, and he decided to come clean about other events at the trial as well. However, it's not clear how many people he killed because those records are lost to time. Even though he admitted to being the culprit, his wife, Helena, was never convinced it was him. People were so enraged by his case that they wanted him to be hanged, but he only received life in prison. Because of a mob that tried to take justice into their hands and hang him themselves, he was moved to the Como County Courthouse. But this didn't keep him safe. He met his end on July 28, 1876, when someone shot him through the cell window. It was never discovered who shot him. While it's likely no one except Helena mourned Wilhelm's death, many people attended Emma's funeral. However, Emma found her way to the Magnolia Hotel herself. The current owners, Aaron and Jim, posted footage online in which an unseen figure is seen playing with toys. The toys move around seemingly by themselves, but Jim and Aaron believe it's Emma playing with them as the activity occurs in the children's playroom. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now. Number 3. Christina Castiglione. In early 1983, 19-year-old Christina Castiglione lived with her parents in Redford, Michigan. She worked as a clerk in the research department at the Detroit Edison Company. She was also considering enlisting in the Army. She had a steady boyfriend. On the evening of March 19, 1983, Christina was walking home from a friend's house. Her boyfriend was traveling in a car with two friends and saw her walking home. He didn't ask his friends to pick her up because Christina didn't like his friends. Tragically, 19-year-old Christina Castiglione went missing after that. Her mother reported her missing the next day. Shortly after her boyfriend saw her, 3 people called the police to report seeing a partially dressed woman being pulled into a car. The police investigated the call, but they found no trace of the woman. 10 days after Christina went missing, a man exploring Oak Grove State Game Park area in Deerfield Township, Michigan, found her partially clad body. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. The police did not develop any strong suspects in the case and soon went cold. In the early 2000s, a DNA profile of the killer was created and it was submitted to CODIS, but no match was found. Nearly 20 years went by. Then in March 2022, the police applied for a grant for the nonprofit group Season of Justice. They provide law enforcement with funds for DNA testing. They approved the funding. So the DNA was sent to Othram Inc., a Texas-based private DNA lab that specializes in genetic genealogy. They found 3 family members of the killer. The police got DNA samples from all 3 people. The testing proved that the killer was Charles David Shaw. He was 26 years old at the time of the murder. The police could find no connection between Shaw and Christina. However, he did live within 5 miles of where her body was found. So they don't think she was targeted. Instead, he happened to come across her as she was walking alone. Shaw's family said he was mentally ill and he struggled with his gender identity. They also called him a sex addict. Shaw had a criminal record. In 1973, he was arrested for breaking and entering. 4 years later, he was arrested for drug possession. In 1981, he was arrested after he attempted to kidnap a woman from a fast food parking lot. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and served 2 weeks in prison. A year later, he was arrested after trying to steal a pair of women's shoes from a department store. Shaw could not be charged with Christina's murder. 6 months after the murder, Shaw died. His death was labeled accidental sexual asphyxiation. Shaw's family was shocked by the news. The police thanked them for their cooperation. Christina's family was thankful for a little bit of closure. Number 2. David Malcom. In February 1987, 26-year-old David Malcom worked at the Red Cross Emergency Community Shelter in Ithaca, New York. He had been working there for about 18 months. Malcom grew up in Connecticut and graduated from the University of Connecticut and Cornell University. Malcom was interested in computers and wanted to take graduate classes in computing. He had extensively traveled and liked the outdoors. Before working at the shelter, he had counseled middle and high school students in suicide prevention, and he had worked in a psychiatric home. Tragically, Malcom's parents died when he was in his late teens. On February 11, 1987, Malcom was working a 24-hour shift at the emergency shelter. On February 12th, a co-worker made a horrifying discovery. Malcom had been stabbed multiple times from the waist to the neck. The police interviewed people at the shelter. 2 co-workers said that a man came to talk to Malcom as they were leaving the shelter. They said that the conversation looked friendly. One of them provided a description of the man, and it resulted in this composite image. The police investigated the brutal murder for 2 years, but no arrests were made. Then the case went cold. Over the next 12 years, the case was occasionally examined. Then, in the early 2000s, it was shelved. In September 2015, the case was officially reopened, and the investigators were hoping DNA would help solve the case. Over the next 9 months, they followed up on over 100 leads, but the killer's identity eluded them. But the police continued to work on the case. Then in May 2023, the police announced that, with the help of DNA evidence, the case had been solved. They said that while David Malcom was working, a teenage girl from Newfield came into the shelter. She had been the victim of domestic violence and wanted help leaving her boyfriend. Her boyfriend came to the shelter looking for her. He demanded that Malcom tell him where she was, and he refused. The man ended up stabbing him to death. The killer died in 2019, and his name and no other details about him were released. The police hailed David Malcom for his heroic act that ultimately cost him his life. Number 1. Donna Macho. In the winter of 1984, Donna Macho was 19 years old. She lived in the basement apartment of her mother and stepfather's home in East Windsor, New Jersey. Donna had an older and younger sister. Donna was working as a legal secretary, but she dreamed of being a model. On the night of Saturday, February 26, 1984, Donna was at home. She and her younger sister stayed up till about 2:45 a.m. watching horror movies. Then her sister went to bed. That day, Donna planned on going to work. Even though it was a Sunday, she wanted to go to the office when no one was there and catch up on work. So her family did not expect to see her that day. But that evening, when she didn't return home, they became worried. They checked her room, and they were instantly alarmed. There was some blood splatter. They called the police and reported her missing. The police found no signs of a break-in. But about 90 minutes after she was reported missing, her car was found near a sewage plant close to the border of East Windsor and Cranberry. The interior was splattered with blood, but there were no clues as to Donna's whereabouts. However, because of the blood, the police strongly suspected foul play. It wasn't long before the case went cold. The disappearance deeply affected the Macho family. Donna's stepfather died 6 months after her disappearance. Donna's mother and younger sister moved to Texas a few years after the deaths. They placed a lot of stuff in a storage unit, including many family photos and 16 boxes of information on the case. In 1987, the storage unit was broken into and everything was stolen. In 1990, Donna's mother, Betty, passed away. Then in April 1995, 11 years after Donna went missing, a scout troop leader was walking through a wooded area in Cranberry. He found some skeletal remains wrapped up in a carpet. He notified the police. Dental records determined it was the remains of 19-year-old Donna Macho. Her remains were found about a mile from where her car had been abandoned. The medical examiner thought she had been shot in the head. The police had a suspect, and the discovery of the remains further convinced them that they had the right man. His name was Nathaniel Harvey, and he had a complicated criminal history. On June 17, 1985, 37-year-old Irene Schnaps did not show up for work. Schnaps had been a widow for about 10 weeks. A co-worker went to her Plainsboro, New Jersey apartment. He found her dead body. She had been raped and bludgeoned to death. She had been struck in the head at least 15 times with a hatchet. Months later, 35-year-old Nathaniel Harvey was arrested after attempting to break into 3 homes. In the car, the police found a watch that had been stolen from Schnaps' home. Also, a bloody shoe print was found on a pillow in the room where Schnaps had been murdered. The sole of Harvey's shoe matched the print. He was charged with her murder. After he was arrested, he was connected to several other home invasions and sexual assaults. After 3 days of questioning, Harvey confessed to breaking into Schnaps' apartment and stealing the watch. He also admitted to striking her in the head with an object that he said was used to cut wood they found in the garage. However, the confession was not recorded or written down. Nathaniel Harvey went to trial in October 1986. He was found guilty and he was sentenced to death. Harvey appealed his conviction, claiming he was never read his Miranda rights. In 1990, the New Jersey Supreme Court overturned his conviction. The prosecution was also told that they couldn't use the confession when he was retried. That was their strongest piece of evidence, but during that time, a new investigative tool had emerged, that was DNA profiling. Harvey's DNA was compared to the DNA left at the crime scene. It was a match. He went to trial again in 1994, and this time the DNA evidence was the strongest evidence against him. Once again, he was found guilty and he was sentenced to death. In 2007, New Jersey abolished the death penalty. Harvey's sentence was commuted to life without parole. At that time, new DNA testing was ordered. Harvey's lawyer argued that the DNA link was not strong enough. Harvey's conviction was also appealed. In 2015, his conviction was overturned because the judges ruled that he did not receive adequate assistance from his public defenders. In 2020, 7-year-old Nathaniel Harvey died while waiting to go to trial for a 3rd time. He always maintained he was innocent of murder. He claimed he had never murdered anyone. He told his lawyer to keep the evidence after he died. He said that the evidence would eventually exonerate him. His lawyer had fought for 20 years trying to prove he was innocent. The police had always believed that Harvey killed Schnaps. They thought he might have also killed Donna Macho. Harvey's MO was to break into women's homes and rape them. Also, Donna's body was dumped near a farm where Harvey worked at the time of the murder. Her car was abandoned within walking distance of his home. Harvey was questioned several times about Donna's murder. He always denied being the killer. During the initial investigation, his DNA was compared to semen left in Donna's room. But since it was still early in the days of DNA testing, the tests were inconclusive. In February 2022, Donna Macho's case was reopened. One thing that they discovered was that she did not die from a gunshot wound. However, she did have an extensive head injury. No cause of death was determined. All the evidence was retested. In early 2023, the investigators got the results of the DNA testing. Nathaniel Harvey's DNA was a match to semen that was left in Donna's bedroom. His DNA was the only DNA found in the room that had no explanation for why it was there. Nearly 39 years after the murder of Donna Macho, the police have closed the case. Sadly, Donna's sister, Tori, died in 2013. Only her younger sister Julie was alive to hear that the case had been solved. She was the last one of her family to see Donna alive. They had spent the last day of her life watching movies. She was happy to get a little bit of closure, but she was also angry. She told NJ.com, "I was relieved it was going to be closed, but so mad. Mad I didn't stay and help her fight. Mad he could invade her home so easily. Mad he was not in jail. Mad he was dead. He never had to pay for this." Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.